Hello, hello. This is Justin Colletti of SonicScoop. If you are here for the live stream, let me know if you can see me and hear me in the chat box. You are never going to hear EQ the same way again if you get hip with me and check out the new course that I've just launched called EQ Even if you're not going to check out the full-length course, I still want to spill the beans for you on a couple of cool principles and takeaways that you can incorporate into the way that you're working when it comes to EQ. And if you guys have any questions about EQ or about the course, type into the chat box and I'll answer some questions live here on the stream. But before I do, I want to give you a sense for why I made this course, what makes it different, what makes it unique, and also give you some takeaways I think that you can start implementing whether or not you do this course. If you want to check it out, go over to eqbreakthroughs.com. There's a link in the description. And some of you in the chat already said you bought it and are enjoying it. It literally just came out like 12 hours ago, but tons of people have gotten into the course already. So I'd encourage you to join the community there. We're going to be doing live streams that are all about EQ, going to some great depth and detail. And dude, there are hours in this new course. When I did my compression breakthroughs course, I thought that's probably the biggest course I'm ever going to do because so many people misunderstand compression, have trouble hearing it, have trouble really knowing how to integrate it. And I thought EQ will be easy. We all know how to use EQ, right? It's probably the most common plugin that we use in our DAW. If you had to do like a count of any of your sessions in a DAW, like what's the most used plugin? It is probably EQ. And for a lot of people, EQ will be the first plugin in their chain. But it is also possibly the most powerful tool. We almost consider it like an afterthought, just like we consider mixing and balances in the mix, the actual setting levels in the mix. Sometimes that's an afterthought to us. But honestly, the most powerful tool we have is the fader. But the second most powerful tool we have is EQ. There's no question in my mind that you can make more of a change to a sound with EQ than just about anything else besides the volume fader. The only thing that might come close is maybe reverb. But man, EQ is uniquely powerful, and how to use it is so context dependent. And so much of the EQ advice that I've seen out there kind of ignores context. So in EQ Breakthroughs, not only do we go into this idea of how to use EQ in general on a conceptual level, but we also get kind of nitty gritty on every single different instrument with advice for every specific genre. One of my favorite modules to do when you guys get to it is the module on bass, where we take one bass sound and we EQ it like 6 different ways. One way that we're EQing it turns into like a 90s jazz fusion bass. One way we EQ it turns it into like a rock bass. You can EQ it slightly differently and turn it into a metal bass. You can EQ it slightly differently and turn it into like an old school funk bass. All with just respecting like what are the differences? What's normal for EQ in this style? And knowing how to do that and how to mimic that is one of the cool things that happens in the practical sessions in EQ Breakthroughs. But even bigger, I think, than the practical hands-on stuff where we get ears on and listen to real examples are some of the conceptual ideas about how to approach EQ to begin with. And I think one of the biggest problems a lot of us have with EQ is EQing aimlessly. We kind of just go in there, solo the kick drum, start EQing it, EQ the ranges we've been told are the right places to EQ a kick drum, and then move on. But really the best EQ comes from contextually EQing, making sure the kick drum works in the context of the rest of the drum kit and the rest of the track and makes sense for the genre that you're in. One of the things that scares people about using EQ, though, is that so many of us have trouble memorizing frequencies. And I have met some great mixing engineers, some great producers over the past more than a decade of interviewing producers and engineers, probably been 15 years now or more that I've been interviewing and studying and producing masterclasses with some of the best mixers in the business. And a lot of them tell me, Justin, I'm not really that kind of guy that knows whether it's 300 hertz or 400 hertz. And I can't tell 795 hertz from 802 hertz. I don't know. That's not how I think about EQ. And it's actually not how I encourage you to think about EQ either in this course. One of the big takeaways for me, one of the things that really changed the way that I could hear EQ forever was to start to realize that you can just break up the frequency spectrum into a handful of core ranges. And you really only need to understand these core frequency ranges. And once you develop a sense memory for these core frequency ranges, there's 7 of them that I identify. And once you can get to easily identifying which of these 7 core frequency ranges you want to adjust, and you can just do that without even thinking. We have exercises in the course to get you there. Once you can do that, you kind of pick the right frequency by accident. So that's one of the big things that I want to get you into, is not trying to obsess over finding the difference between 395 hertz versus 398 hertz, or even the difference between 350 hertz and 450 hertz. It's great if you train your ears to get that granular. And with some of the exercises in this course, you can get there over time. No question about it. But this starting point of once you can break up the frequency band into the frequency spectrum into 3 ranges, you're in a pretty good place where you can maybe make 50% of your EQ decisions more easily than before. But when you can break it up into 5 bands, you're like 80% of the way there. And once you can break it up into 7 bands, you're really, I would say, ahead of 90% of people doing audio, and maybe even 90% of people doing audio for a living. Why do I make that claim? It's because for a long time, I was making a living doing audio for years upon years without being able to reliably do this. To instantly listen to a sound and say, I need to adjust an area, which of these 7 core ranges is it? And then just go ahead and do it. But now, today, that's what I do all day long in mastering. I listen to a sound and I first say to myself, what, if anything, needs to change? And that is the number one biggest question to ask yourself when it comes to EQ. What, if anything, needs to change? And then you refine that question. Which direction does it need to go in? And I give you 4 cardinal directions in the course, an ability to really learn to understand which of these 4 cardinal directions your EQ should go in. Does it need to get brighter? Does it need to get darker? Does it need to get more scooped and more hyped? Does it need to get more mid-rangey and more focused? How do you know which direction to take it in? And then once you've decided which direction you need to take it in, exactly where and by how much do you need to EQ? And with how wide of a bandwidth? And just by really developing your sense memory for these 7 core frequency ranges, you can get there surprisingly quickly each and every time. And the methodology I give you guys for EQing from scratch when you need to, it's so much better than this old outdated notion of sweeping through your EQs. You've probably heard this advice at some point. Well, just boost a lot with a really narrow bandwidth, do like a 10 dB boost and like sweep through the frequency spectrum. And as soon as it starts to sound bad, just cut that down. And I've got to say, this technique is it's a good way to learn what the frequency spectrum sounds like, but it's also a good way to turn your signal into Swiss cheese and to cut things that don't need to be cut, and to cut things that might just be resonances in your room or resonances in your headphones or your speakers. So we have a much better system for EQing in the course. And we have these really practical, really specific ideas about how to EQ bass in specific genres, kick drum in specific genres. Because if you listen to like a Led Zeppelin kick drum, an old school classic rock kick drum, and then you compare that to a modern heavy metal kick drum or a modern trap hip hop kick drum, totally different EQ profiles. And we talk about how to do that in each and every genre. We talk about how to listen for EQ and how to go further with EQ than you ever have before. Before I give you a couple more tips, I just want to read some of the chats that are coming in here. And one of these folks, as Josh says, I bought the course already this morning, looking forward to it. Aaron says he just bought it while I was sleeping. It's great to hear. Music 7 Studios in here. Charlie May says, I bought the course last night. The mixing, mastering, and compression courses changed my life, man. That is so awesome to hear. And Charlie, we haven't met. I appreciate the ringing endorsement there. I've heard that kind of feedback a lot of times about these courses. I really do put my heart and soul into them. I want to make them as comprehensive as possible. I don't want them to be basic surface level advice, the same tips and tricks you've heard a million times before. I really want to change how your brain is wired so you hear things differently and change the way you work forever for the better going forward from here. I think we've done that in compression breakthroughs and mixing breakthroughs and mastering demystified, and I think we do that here in EQ breakthroughs. Even if you just go through the first handful of modules that are all EQ ear training, that just give you a sense for differentiating between these frequency bands and starting to develop a sense memory for kind of instant recall of which general area should I be EQing. If you just go through those, the first couple hours of the course, I think your ability to hear and approach EQ will be improved forever for the better. Of course, there is on top of that, like a whole nother 8 hours in the course, if you want to get super nerdy with me. But I try to make it like compression breakthroughs in that way, where in compression breakthroughs, if you just check out the first 90 minutes of the course, it is worth its weight in gold already. Where if you just go through those compression ear training exercises and that understanding of how to really hear compression and how to think about how to apply each of the settings, if you just go through the first 90 minutes of compression breakthroughs, you're going to be better at compression for the rest of your life. And that's the feedback I get again and again. But if you want, there's a whole nother 6 or 7 hours in that course about compressing every single instrument in every single genre. We do the same thing with EQ breakthroughs. Ryan Santos Phillips says, mastering demystified not only helped out my mastering process, it also changed the way I mix and what to look for in the pre-master stage. Oh, that's so beautiful, Ryan. It's exactly the kind of stuff that I'm looking for helping you guys with in these courses. And the feedback I get on these things is amazing. Really, one of the biggest highlights in my life is listening to before and afters of people who've taken these courses. I mean, the number of emails I've gotten from people who've taken mixing breakthroughs and they write to me and said, Justin, like I instantly, within a week or two, started mixing better just from changing my mental frameworks, just from adopting this approach that you've given to mixing. And not just to hear people say that to me, but then to hear their mixes, how they were before, and then their first mix after they've taken the course. And these are people who feel these eureka moments that they've just leapfrogged. And I hear it too. I gotta tell you, the 3 most exciting things that I do in my life, much more exciting than when I get if a gold record plaque or a platinum record plaque I should have coming in about a month here. And when sometimes we'll put out a video that'll get, 1 million views, or some of them get hundreds of thousands. Bigger for me than that are these 3 things. 1, someone takes a course and they tell me how much it changed what they do and the confidence it gave them and the mental framework it gave them. But more important than that, hearing the differences. And the only other things that come close are when I have a coaching call client or a mastering client go through the same process with me, where we sit down, really listen to their tracks together, the before and after that we can do in mastering, or the before and after we can create with a few simple changes, and then them taking that information and everything they do from therefore forward has just like leaped up. They were on one plateau and it's just like they stepped up to another level and the journey resumes. So really exciting that I can help you guys with this stuff. I really encourage you to check out EQ Breakthroughs. This is all stuff in this course that I wish that I learned about 10 years earlier. And it's the same with compression breakthroughs. When I'm going through this course, creating some of this stuff, it's hard sometimes because I'm like, some of the stuff that I'm telling people seems so obvious. But it seems so obvious now that I understand it and know how to explain it. But as someone who's been working professionally in audio for more than 2 decades, some of the stuff that seems obvious to me now and will sound obvious to you after you've heard it explained and after you've heard the changes, even though it'll seem obvious afterwards, just like me, I think these are things that will have escaped you for years and possibly decades. Some of the stuff I teach you in this course is stuff that sounds obvious the moment it comes out of my mouth. But I swear to you, as a relatively reasonably intelligent person who's been making a good living and income for 2 decades, a lot of this stuff were ideas and concepts and abilities to hear that I did not have for at least 10 years. So if I can, in compression breakthroughs, help you get to really learn to hear, understand, and use compression at a professional level in literally a matter of like a week instead of decades, and if I can do the same thing with EQ breakthroughs, like increase your confidence dramatically, where all of a sudden you can be in the position that I'm in now, that I wasn't always in, where I listen to a sound, and here's my process. I go, what, if anything, needs to change? What direction does this sound need to go in? That's number 1. Number 2, okay, which general frequency range is it? It's somewhere in the mid-range, Is it the low mids, the center mids, or the upper mids? In this case, it's the upper mids. But is it in the lower half of the upper mids or the upper half of the upper mids? It's more of the upper half of the upper mids. So let me try making the change somewhere around 4 to 6K. And now if you want to do any sweeping, you're just sweeping in that one little area to find precisely the right frequency. But there's an even better methodology than just sweeping, which I'll tell you more about in the course. If you can narrow things down like that, to first say to yourself, the sound needs to be brighter, and then have a real methodology for figuring out where and by how much, it just makes it so intuitive, so instinctual. And I want to make EQ less of a thinky process. I want to make it a process of consideration where you pause for a moment and ask yourself, what, if anything, needs to change, where and in what direction? And the more that you do this, the more that it becomes an instinctual process where that set of questions is happening super rapidly. At first, this decision-making process will be broken into steps and chunks, but the more you do it, the less it feels like steps and the more it starts to feel like intuition. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned, and maybe you've learned too, from getting good at something else. Like when you get good at playing a musical instrument, or recently I've been trying to get good at jujitsu, and then I've tried to get good at chess and shooting a bow. In each of those things, and EQing is no different, you really need to break the process down into steps, make it a little bit too intellectual for a moment, make it a little bit too conscious for a moment, but then you repeat that conscious process several times until it becomes so ingrained that it becomes muscle memory, just like playing a musical instrument. All right, that's all that I've got to say about EQ Breakthroughs. If you're not excited to check it out, you should be. Go check out eqbreakthroughs.com. There's a link down there. If you guys have any questions about EQ or about the course, feel free to ask them in here. But I see a lot of comments from people who've taken the course, who really are liking the course, but I'm not seeing any specific questions yet. If you go through the course and you have any questions as it goes along, I will give you guys, I'm going to unveil this soon. I'm going to do a live Q&A. I think I'm going to add that on as one of the special bonuses, that we'll do an EQ Q&A just about the course for those of you who have taken it, and we're going to add that on to what's happening in the course. So if you guys run into any questions as you go along, I'm here for you to answer them. I can do that in real time via video, and we can even bring up some of these sessions together and listen to them in real time. Any questions that you guys might have, I'm here for you. So thank you so much for joining me for this announcement live stream. Since I don't see a ton of questions coming in, I'm going to end it here. But thank you so much for hanging out with me. Just so you know, there won't be a podcast this week because we're doing the members-only live stream where we will be giving real-time mix feedback for members. So if you are a SonicScoop channel member, make sure you submit your mix before Wednesday so we can have a listen to it together in real time, give you specific actionable feedback on your mixes. One question that came in here, Brent Johnson says, if you're just getting started, what order would you recommend taking your courses in? There's two answers to that question, Brent. One question is whichever one of these topics that you feel like you're struggling the most with. Like if you feel like you're really struggling with compression, take compression breakthroughs. If you feel like you're really struggling with EQing, take EQ breakthroughs. If you feel like you're really struggling with just having a sense for like what to do in the mix overall, take mixing breakthroughs. Or if you really want to learn mastering, you feel like you've got the mixing stage well enough handled, you're curious about mastering, take mastering demystified. But the shorter answer is mixing breakthroughs. If I had to say just one to start with, it's mixing breakthroughs. And mixing breakthroughs is a course unlike any other. There's two halves to the course. Originally, it was just one course where it's almost like just like a mix coaching course that gives you a process and gives you special exercises that you can do where once you've done these exercises, your ability to mix will improve immediately. Like just from watching this course and actually doing the exercises in it, your ability to mix will leapfrog, guaranteed, or your money back. If you think that I'm overstating this, please just say, Justin, you oversold me on this thing. I want my money back, and it's yours. I 100% believe this, and that's why I can say it, because I've seen it happen, and I've heard the feedback, and I've heard the before and afters again and again. So if it had to be one, it'd be mixing breakthroughs. So we first have this mix coaching half, which is awesome. And then for the people who like this stuff, you also get to see me mix in every genre, in every different DAW. There's a whole bunch of multi-tracks for you to download, and I think that one is absolutely a great one. And if you really don't want to buy a whole course and you want something that's really low commitment, what I'd recommend is for $5, you can become a member of the channel, get access to monthly live Q&A sessions with me, as well as regular mix feedback sessions. There are says, I already purchased the compression mixing bundle, excited for the EQ breakthroughs. Having paid you to master a single for me, I'm a true believer in your EQ skills. Thank you so much. That's so awesome to hear. Brent seemed to appreciate that answer. Since I don't want this announcement to go for too long, I'm going to leave it here. But if you're excited by any of this, we have a special deal for a very limited time, really just this week, launch week, where you can get a special price on EQ Breakthroughs. Check it out at eqbreakthroughs.com. 30-day money-back guarantee on it. There's absolutely no risk to you to try this course out. And if you don't love it, just ask for your money back and you'll get it. That happens so infrequently because I really do think these things change lives. And that's why I'm not at all embarrassed to go out there and chill for my own courses. I really put a lot into this, and I hope you guys get a lot out of it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this quick announcement live stream. See you next time.